Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. The Chinese Commerce Ministry stated and has confirmed that Vice Premier He Lifeng will attend trade talks with the United States in Stockholm from July 27 to 30th, alongside U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. China has expressed regret over the United States' decision to withdraw from UNESCO, calling it not the behavior of a responsible major country. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Jiakyun also stressed Beijing's continued support for the UN Cultural and Educational Agency. A Russian delegation led by Vladimir Medinsky is now en route to Turkey for the first peace talks with Ukraine in over 7 weeks. According to Russian news agencies, the talks set to take place starting at 4 p.m. GMT. Meanwhile, Russia has slammed Italy for cancelling a July 27 concert by pro-Putin conductor Valery Gergiev, calling the move discriminatory and influenced by Ukrainian lobbying. The event, planned at the Regia di Caserta near Naples, was dropped following public outcry from Italian politicians and activists, including the widow of Alexei Navalny. Over 100 aid and rights organizations have issued an urgent call for action as hunger deepens in Gaza, demanding an immediate permanent ceasefire and the removal of all aid restrictions. The groups say starvation is spreading while truckloads of life-saving supplies remain blocked outside the Strip. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff will travel to Rome this week to push for a ceasefire in Gaza amid mounting humanitarian suffering. He's expected to meet Israel's Ron Dermer and a senior Qatari official on Thursday, according to Axios. The UK has sanctioned 25 individuals, groups, and suppliers from China, the Middle East, and the Balkans accused of facilitating migrant smuggling across the English Channel. The move is part of a new strategy by the British government to deter illegal migrant crossings. Top EU trade negotiator Maros Sefcovic will hold talks with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick as Brussels pushes to finalize a deal by August 1st to avoid heavy tariffs. The European Union Commission says intensive discussions are underway to reach a negotiated outcome with the United States. Top EU trade negotiator Maros Sefcovic will hold key talks with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick later today, as Brussels pushes to seal a deal before the looming August 1st deadline and avoid the reimposition of steep U.S. tariffs on EU goods. The European Commission says its priority remains achieving a negotiated outcome, with both sides engaged in intensive technical and political level discussions. However, the Commission has also made clear it is preparing for all eventualities, including the imposition of additional EU countermeasures if no deal is reached. The outcome of these talks could have significant implications for transatlantic trade relations amid growing global economic uncertainty. Now we're joined by Martin Sairrides. He's a foreign affairs expert joining us live from Ecuador. Thank you, Martin, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, with the looming August 1st deadline so close, and how critical are the upcoming talks between Sefcovic and Lutnick for the future of transatlantic trade relations?
Right now, the strategy from the European Union is to try to make a deal with the US. That's the major purpose. But while they're doing that and they're doing their best for coming with a proper deal for the benefit of both sides of the ocean, they have also a plan B. They are also focusing on a counter response in the case that these deals wouldn't work in the hypothetical case. But yeah, they are taking this very seriously. This is a top tier priority for the European Union to solve this misunderstanding with the US, to lower the tariffs, to make the deal more affordable for both parties. And they're running out of time. And at the same time, the European Union is very clear that in the case this won't work, they have another strategy to counterbalance the effects of Trump's tariffs.
And Martin, now what are the key points that both sides will need to address to avoid a trade crisis between Europe and US?
First of all, lowering the tariffs. Basically, Trump wants to add a 25%, which is something that has never happened before. Obviously, these tariffs are supposed to be beneficial for the US economy. According to Trump, the policy from the US towards its partners have been so open and so weak. But at the same time, he does not realize that this can have a lot of consequences because all of these tariffs don't come alone. Obviously, the European Union and other regions of the world can again apply the same logic and apply tariffs to this deal. So basically, this is the main problem here. The tariffs also. There's also other issues like free trade between the European Union and the US. They have long away have these trade deals, but at the same time, it has been not so regulated by the US, and they want to be the leader of these new regulations, which the European Commission and the European Union are not ready to accept.
And now EU has emphasized the priority of achieving negotiated outcome, but also signaled its readiness for countermeasures. So how likely is it that EU will take retaliatory actions, according to you?
I think if the European Union had enough time to negotiate with Trump and the US, I think the deals would be successful because of the tight deadline and the fact that both parties are running out of time. I think it's very unlikely that a ideal deal will be possible, and I think the European Union will need to focus on another strategy.
Thank you very much, Martin, for joining us today and sharing your insight. Now we move on to our next news. In a significant move aimed at bolstering global economic stability, the European Union and Japan have announced plans to work more closely together to counter economic coercion and address unfair trade practices, speaking in Tokyo following an EU-Japan summit. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized the importance of strengthening economic security and promoting fair competition. Her remarks come as the EU continues to face challenges in finalizing a trade deal with the United States. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba echoed von der Leyen's statements, stating both sides are committed to maintaining a free and rules-based economic order. The leaders also revealed plans to initiate a defense industry dialogue and launch negotiations on a Japan-EU information security agreement, signaling deepening ties beyond trade. Now we are joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, in addition to the trade, the leaders have discussed a defense industry dialogue. So how do these expanded areas of cooperation reflect the evolving strategic priorities between the EU and Japan?
Originally, Japan and the EU cooperation focusing on the economic affairs. But currently, this agreement expands not only the economic area, but also the security area. Indeed, the security area is main area in this cooperation this time. And why is, of course, the background is very clear. China and the United States. In case of China, China is limiting, restricting to export rare earth now. And even if Japan's request, the EU's request, also the US request, China hasn't eased the restriction to export the rare earth. In case of the China and the US, they agreed in 90 days, but indeed the reality is China still hesitate to export rare earths because 90% of the rare earths was controlled by China's mines. So that's why China tried to exploit such kind of status, and that is a very big matter. And rare earth is main source of the high-tech industry, so that's why high-tech products and the car industry also. So rare earth is very important. But at the same time, so weapon is also rely on this rare earth. So this is part of the security. But at the same time, this time, U.S. strategy asked allies and partners to share more security burden. For example, in case of Europe, Russia's invasion to Ukraine, in this case, Europe should pay to buy the U.S. weapon to provide the United States. Ukraine. Sorry. So from the U.S. to Ukraine, but European need to prepare the money. Under such kind of situation, European itself need to strengthen their defense industry. And the same things could happen to Japan because the US will request Japan to pay more for the defense. Just 2% of GDP is not enough, 5% of GDP. It is expected. NATO has already agreed to raise the defense budget from the 2% to the 5%. So maybe there's a high possibility that the US will ask Japan to do the same. So under such kind of situation, the European country need to strengthen their defense industry, and Japan needs to strengthen their defense industry too. So that's why EU and Japan cooperate in the defense area is a new area, but a very important area and a logical area to cooperation. So China and the US policy against China, which asked the allies to partner to share the security burden, both affect this agreement between Japan and the EU. That is background.
And Doctor, now the EU and Japan have also announced closer collaboration. And now how significant is this move for global economic stability, and what challenges do both sides face in implementing such a strategy?
This is very important because currently the age of deal has happened. Of course, the President Trump changed the rule of the global free trade to the bilateral negotiation to deal is a new rule. So that's why in case of the negotiation with the United States, how many cards to deal is a matter for the EU and Japan too. So in this case, if this country has some another choices, alternative choices, for example, the other economic partner, trade partner, that is strange in the negotiation. And at the same time, indeed, to deal with China, they need more allies and partners. That is a fact too. And so they do not want to rely on China's economy. So viewed from the stability of the world economy, indeed the diversification of the trade partners is a new trend, and this is one of the choice between Japan and the EU. Cooperation is very important choice for both the Japan side and EU side. And at the same time, rule itself is changing. The trade rule itself is changing. That is reality, but at the same time, still the European side and Japan side want to maintain the traditional rule of the global free trade, or even if this is changing just now, and it will change more in the future, I think, but still they want to maintain, and that's why they try to negotiate directly and try to maintain the certain part. That is also one aspect of this cooperation, I think.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is defending new legislation that removes the independence of two key anti-corruption agencies, sparking protests and international backlash. The law puts the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office under the President-appointed Prosecutor General. Critics warn it could allow political interference and weaken the fight against graft. The EU called the move a serious step back, saying it threatens Ukraine's path to membership. Berlin also said it hampers crucial reforms. Kyiv saw its largest protest since Russia's 2022 invasion, as demonstrators demanded the law be repealed. Zelenskyy maintains the changes are needed during wartime, but promised to address public concerns. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Martin Tsai-Reitz. He's a foreign affairs expert. Thank you, Martin, for staying with us. Now the EU has called this legislative a change, serious step back for Ukraine's path to membership. Now, how significant is this setback in terms of Ukraine's aspiration for EU integration?
The new policies are going to affect the credibility of the institutionality and differentiation and separation of powers, and also the transparency of the processes in Ukraine. One of the major changes in these policies are that all of the officials in the government are no longer required to expose their assets, something that was crucial to battle against corruption and brave in Ukraine, which is very concerning because right now we're seeing like a step backwards in this process of fighting corruption and to facilitate following where the assets of public servants come from. And basically the European Union is very concerned about these changes, and this can also be a threat to the democracy in Ukraine and to the transparency of the decisions in a political level in Ukraine.
And Martin, now Ukraine saw its largest protest since Russia's 22 invasion. There's clear domestic opposition to this law. How do you assess the balance between wartime necessity and maintaining democratic integrity within Ukraine's political reforms?
I think this is not the right timing for doing any type of change in the law, because right now Ukraine is in the middle of a very tragic war with Russia, and the least thing that Ukrainians need is to be divided. They need to be united to fight against their enemy and their threat. However, Zelenskyy, in my opinion, has been making a huge mistake in changing these laws, which instead of protecting the integrity of the system and the rule of law, are making this more suspicious, since now it's going to be very difficult to track if someone has been getting bribes or being corrupted by tracking their assets. And this is going to only benefit the current government. I don't know what Zelenskyy is thinking about. This is going to affect his image as a leader and the transparency. Basically, Ukraine has been supported by the West, by the US and by the European Union, because it's like the island of freedom and democracy. That's the reason why the West is supporting Ukraine. It's a democratic and country, and it's a transparent country, but now it is suspicious to not continue to be this. So yeah, it's critical for the European Union.
Thank you very much, Martin Tsai-Reitz, for joining us and sharing your insight throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news. China has condemned the Trump administration's decision to withdraw from UNESCO, calling it irresponsible and regrettable. Beijing's foreign ministry said Washington's move undermines its role as a responsible global power. Let's listen in to the full statement made by China's foreign ministry.
我们注意到，联合国教科文组织以及多国对美方再次退群表示遗憾。这已经是美国第3次退出联合国教科文组织，并且长期拖欠会费，这不是负责任大国应有的作为。联合国教科文组织的宗旨是推动教育、科学、文化领域的国际合作，促进文明相互理解和融合，维护世界和平，实现共同发展。中方始终坚定支持联合国教科文组织工作。在联合国成立80周年之际，我们呼吁各国重申对多边主义的承诺， 以实际行动支持以联合国为核心的国际体系，以国际法为基础的国际规则，以联合国宪章宗旨和原则为基础的国际关系基本准则。
The U.S. State Department has said that the withdrawal, effective December 31st, 2026, is in line with Trump's America First policy, criticizing UNESCO's inclusion of Palestine. UNESCO's Director General said the agency had been prepared for the exit, adding that other countries' support has strengthened its financial position since 2018. Now we go to our guest discussion with Dr. Charles Sinkala. He's an international relations expert joining us live from Johannesburg. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, in what ways does Washington's decision to withdraw from UNESCO affect the United States' standing as a global power, just like how China claimed? And does this further alienate U.S. from international multilateralism?
Yeah, I think it is something that has exacerbated. There's always a situation why United States of America would like to withdraw from UNESCO, and I think it is the lack of participation in terms of bilateral and multilateral relations between Europe and other nations.
And Doctor, now what are the potential long-term consequences for UNESCO and other international bodies when major powers like the U.S. decide to withdraw?
It's got a very significant impact in the sense that these member states, such as the United States of America, had actually a bigger budget in terms of supporting UNESCO. And I think the leaving of the United States of America will have a significant impact, not only on the financial basis, but as well on the legitimacy of UNESCO as a whole.
And Doctor, now how does this withdrawal of U.S. impact global cooperations on issues like education, science, and culture?
It is actually unfortunate that globally the geopolitics of this world they are intertwined with other activities that happens, especially where United States of America is involved as being one of the superpowers of nations that has actually had programs in terms of their PEPFAR funding or USAID funding, and this funding which supports education, health and agricultural sectors significantly, indirectly or directly, they have affected in terms of United States of America threatening to pull out from the UNESCO. We hope that they can revisit the situation because the impact will be significant.
Thank you, Dr. Charles, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we move on to our next news. Now, 10 more people have died from famine and malnutrition in Gaza over the past 24 hours, bringing the death toll to 111 people, according to the territory's health ministry. The deaths come amid an ongoing Israeli military campaign and a full blockade imposed since March 2nd. Images from the region showed residents desperately seeking food and water, with children severely malnourished. Over 100 aid groups have warned of mass starvation, meanwhile, the U.S. is sending its top envoy to Europe for ceasefire and humanitarian talks. Now let's listen into what some Gazan civilians about their health situation had to say.
عندي 12 نفر كل يوم ناكل رز او عدس تكيه في او ما فيش بننام على بطحن بطولنا من عند الله لطحين جعانين ميتين من الجوع ذبحونا حسوا فينا
من سوء التغذيه اطفال بالعمر شهر وشهرين بتموت من سوء التغذيه معابر مسكره ما في ادويه ولا في علاج ولا حتى اكل ما فيش قوتي انك تاكل اليوم طول اليوم ما فيش وهاي حاله ابني بتدل وبتشرح أهل غزة.
The doctors have raised the seriousness of the situation time and again. Israel denies claims of famine. A senior security official has said that no famine had been identified but admitted a drop in aid flow. Let's listen in to Muhammad Abu Salmiya, director of the Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City.
المجاعة كانت تضرب في قطاع غزة بشكل مخيف. أكثر من 90% من أهلنا في قطاع غزة الآن يعانوا من سوء تغذية حاد. المستشفيات الآن أصبحت تعج بهؤلاء المرضى من سوء التغذية. نتحدث عن 17,000 طفل الآن يعانوا من سوء تغذية حاد. نتحدث عن أكثر من 70,000 طفل وما يزيد لهم سوء تغذية. نتحدث أن عداد الأطفال والمرضى الذين توفوا من سوء التغذية ارتفع العداد إلى 71 اليوم، بوفاة طفلين اليوم في محافظة مدينة غزة في مستشفى الشفاء.
Now we move on to our next news. India's foreign ministry has defended its handling of the Air India plane crash victims' remains, stating that identification was conducted professionally and in line with established protocols. The statement comes after British media reported that two families were given the wrong bodies. The incident involved the June 12th crash of AI-171 in Ahmedabad, which killed more than 260 people. The UK is conducting DNA matching to verify identities. India said it continues to work with UK authorities to address concerns. A probe into the crash remains ongoing. Now we're joined by Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former Indian ambassador joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, given the scale of the AI-171 crash, how is India managing the ongoing investigation and ensuring that the families receive both clarity and closure while the probe continues?
I think it remains to be said that this was the biggest crash of an airliner in India for quite some time, I think for 3 decades. And this happened in Ahmedabad on June 12. The investigations are ongoing, and there have been selective disclosures, leaks, etc. in Western media about this, which are a bit premature. Indian investigators are still working on black boxes. They are still trying to fathom precise reason for which this crash occurred within a couple of minutes of takeoff. And this is a puzzle that needs to be unraveled, because similar airliners are used by Air India and other Indian airlines, as well as all over the world. So this investigation is being conducted thoroughly, and with the help of Boeing, the company that supplied the plane, and the engine makers. I think what Daily Mail has published, to which the Ministry of External Affairs has reacted, is a private person-based account of 2 caskets of dead persons that were flown to United Kingdom after the crash, and they allegedly contained bodies or body parts of people who were not deceased as per the record. So they were parts of the people who were different from what was allegedly stated on the coffin. This is a technical matter, as DNA analysis is not a precise science. And I think the MEA in India has mentioned that they were satisfied with the diligence shown and sensitivity given to this matter, and they are in touch with their UK counterparts to be able to ascertain whether any mistakes, etc., were made and take corrective steps. this tends to be a sensitive matter because last rites of the deceased by the next of kin and family members is an important ritual.
Yes.
And the case cannot be closed in each one of these instances without that being done. But right now, it'll be a bit premature to take whatever UK's DNA analysis has has allegedly discovered as the truth, negating what has been done in Ahmedabad by the Indian DNA analysts. So let's wait till we arrive at an unvarnished truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mahesh Sachudev, for joining us today and sharing your insight. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.